Anna. And I would like to also start it now. Welcome everybody to our webinar Upscaling in Renovation. We will present findings of a study that we carried out in the past months with the financial support from Breakthrough Energy Foundation. And we have split our agenda in two parts. So we will spend roughly half an hour to present our study. So we will introduce you to what we framed as the innovation and renovation challenge that is still existing despite the many benefits that come with the innovative solutions, including the diversity of innovative solutions and the barriers. And finally, we will present recommendations for policy making. And then we will have a second part of that webinar, which is a panel discussion. And I would like to welcome already now our panelists, Victoria Renz-Kiefel, Thomas Le Duron, and Juan Jesus Munoz, who will then enrich the event with their national perspectives. Thanks a lot already now for being here with us today. I will introduce you after we presented the study more in detail. My name is Sibyl Stoiber. I'm head of BPIE's Berlin office, and I have the pleasure to moderate this webinar. Yes, please, if you could click on the next slide. So if you haven't heard of us yet, we are BPIE, a European nonprofit think tank, and we work towards achieving a climate neutrality in buildings in line with the ambition of the Paris Agreement, and of course, always in support of a fair and sustainable society. And we do so by carrying out data-driven policy analysis, and we provide then advice and also implementing support to decision makers in Europe and globally. Next slide, please. So why focus on innovation in renovation? We do have all the technologies. We know how a decarbonized building stock should look like, and we should rather focus on implementation. Yes, and we should increase the rate of renovation. So this is what is crucial in our research, that we find ways to accelerate renovation, and that hints at the fact that we need a step change in how renovation is done. And during our research on this paper, it became clear that when experts talk or research about innovation for climate protection in buildings, there is sometimes, but often not, a clear division between innovation for new construction and innovation in renovation. And the report confirms that it's really important to distinguish and to develop also a strategic approach for innovation in renovation. So then we have the clear aim of the study to identify key policy levers to mainstream innovation and renovation in Europe, and also to better understand how member states can actually use the new European Energy Performance of Buildings Directive, who they now need to implement to incentivize innovation and renovation more strategically. So we have a huge window of opportunity now at member states level. And there are good reasons for why we should focus on innovation and renovation. Next slide, please. So there exists a lot of research that shows that innovative practices, technologies, materials, they come with many benefits. So the productivity along the renovation chain in Europe can increase up to 45%. And when we zoom into the potential for prefabricated solutions, we can estimate 18% of savings in time for the whole renovation process, or 20% of cost savings through serial renovations. We can expect considerable reductions of CO2 emissions and construction waste through more productive teams and efficient processes, both when it comes to embodied emission, but also in the operational phase of the energy. So, and last but not least, there's the huge benefit of healthier buildings, also the likelihood to have more affordable housing, and less on-site intervention disruption for the building occupants. So through digitized processes alone, we expect 80% less on-site time, and also improved moisture and heat flows, lower energy bills, and better indoor air quality. So while there are many studies out there showing that the benefits of certain approaches are there is still a lack of a systematic and also a regular collection of benefits, especially in the field of renovation, or making the distinction of those benefits between renovation and new construction, and also a lack in strategic approaches by member states to support innovation and renovation. So next, that's the right slide. Okay, so the policies often focus solely on innovation and technology at the operational stage, and by just focusing on a certain stage, all the many challenges but also benefits are remained unaddressed in the other phases of the renovation process. And that's why also we put a special emphasis in our study on process, social, and digitalization innovation. And through more productive teams and efficient processes, we can achieve an acceleration of renovations, or higher renovation rates, which will then also lead to an increased deployment of innovative technologies, etc. Also, if we have less fragmented and more efficient value chains, then this will also facilitate circular economy business models. We know technology won't fix it all, especially when it comes to investment decisions by private households. So another point that we want to emphasize is really that social innovations are needed. And with these words, I will hand over to my colleagues, Lisa Graf and Yason Amarocho. Lisa is Senior Project Manager in our Berlin office, and she has a research focus on sustainable buildings, life cycle carbon emission reduction, more recently also considerably on the sufficiency approaches and resource efficiency. Yason is senior researcher also in our Berlin office. He is an electrical engineer and works on various research projects that involves data-driven policy analysis and also the stock taking of the building stock. He has a PhD from the Technical University in Berlin with a focus on decision-making processes for renovation in the framework of the BIM Speed projects. And here, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Sibyl. And yes, we cannot simply assume that by supporting innovative solutions for new construction that the market for innovation and renovation will be established. And therefore, first, let's look at what do we mean if we say innovation in renovation. So we copied the official definition by Eurostat. It says that an innovation is a new or significantly improved product or process that has not been used before. And our research aligns with the focus, so improved goods, services, and processes that are not yet widespread in the renovation market. And then we add the part where we explicitly look at the need of the renovation sector. It's not only about being new, but also to contribute to solve the problems we just heard about in the beginning, also to speed is too slow, productivity is too little, so costs are too high. Therefore, innovation and renovation needs to tick 3 other boxes as well: speed up and scale up renovation, enhance productivity, and make renovation more affordable, because a highly efficient new material or technology designed for a certain high-tech building would only be relevant for a small share of buildings and thus not be able to bring the needed scale up. So to further define what we mean and what we found, let me take you through the key areas of innovation that we identified. What we did is we started with desk research, researched individual innovative solutions, and we then clustered those solutions that had common characteristics. And we did this because our assumption is that when we group similar ideas and approaches, it becomes easier to identify the common barriers they face and the levers we might use to overcome them. And then on the next slide, I will present you the 5 areas of innovation in renovation that we identified and validated with expert interviews. But last note before diving in, let me just also say that there's often some overlap between the different innovation areas we're talking about today. It's not always possible to put them neatly in just one area. But that said, we still see the value in clustering innovations. So first we have the process and the social innovation. This area is all about improving how renovation is planned and executed and managed to make it more efficient and better connect the whole supply chain, make it less costly and provide higher quality. I won't go into the solutions in detail, but you see there is the renovation sprint or renovation coordinators that guide customers through the whole renovation journey. Then there is integrated product delivery, where all key stakeholders are brought in early to plan and collaborate. And then there is modular prefabrication, which allows parts of buildings to be manufactured offsite and reduce disruption also for the people living there. So a big part Sybil mentioned is also social innovation, which plays really a key role along the technical changes. The second area is digital innovation for renovation. So this covers new or enhanced digital tools that make renovation more efficient and precise, like using augmented and virtual reality for better planning and simulations, or drones to inspect buildings and access their conditions, just to name a few examples. Third, there's technological innovation, obviously. This refers to new technologies that directly improve building performance. Here we have automation systems retrofitted into existing buildings. We have sensors or alternative heating solutions like thermoacoustic heat pumps or infrared heating panels or roof innovations. Then fourth, we have material innovation. This is about developing new materials that are more sustainable, efficient, and durable. And examples include high-performance insulation, self-healing materials, and high-performance glazing. And then finally, our fifth area, circular economy innovation. Now you see this category overlaps with the previous four. It includes elements of process, digital and technological, and material innovation. But we've kept it as a separate area because circular economy solutions also face their own or even additional market barriers, and it's important to tackle those directly. Here we're talking about things like circular design, digital material passports, which record the materials used in a building so they can be recycled later, or secondary or also bio-based materials. So with this, Gerson, over to you.
Thank you, Lisa. As Lisa mentioned before, the idea behind clustering the innovations in these 5 areas was to try to understand what are the challenges that similar innovations encounter. So once we had the 5 innovation areas, we discussed through different engagement events with different experts, and we basically asked them what they consider was the main barriers that each of the innovation areas encounter to be upscale in the market. So once we hear from them, we complemented the insights that we gained through the interviews and the focus group and other events with some results from literature review, and we cluster them. So we gather the barriers for each of the innovation areas, but we categorize them in the 3 main categories that you see on the right. So the purpose is to have an overview of how to tackle the barriers in a strategic way instead of doing individually, to have an strategic approach tackling the market, the value chain, and also the finance barriers that may appear for these innovations that could actually unlock a lot of potentials in the renovation industry. Yes. So I'm going to present you very quickly with some of the barriers. Of course, there are many other barriers that could appear in the renovation process for these innovations. We try to highlight the ones that the experts identify as the most important ones, and the ones that we found also from the literature review. For instance, if we look at the process and social innovations, I can mention quickly that From the market perspective, one of the barriers that was mentioned by the experts is the fact that the compliance requirements of construction standards usually favor traditional construction, so they don't leave a room actually for innovative processes. In terms of the value change for the process and social innovations, we identify the unfavorable procurement rules, but also a culture of aversion to change the existing procedures. And from the financial perspective, an example is that sometimes an extra investment is required for new ways of collaborating or implementing new supportive tools to change the way a process is made. If we look at digitalization very quickly, we will see barriers like a limited interoperability and standardization between tools. In innovation in technology, one of the barriers that was mentioned was the high cost of limited specialized workforce. So the few specialized workforce usually represent a high cost for the implementation of a certain technology. In material innovations, one of the barriers was the unclear standards and outdated requirements that are often overdimensioned, and these put an extra pressure on new solutions. From the circularity economy perspective, one of the barriers was the fact that new business models are required. And these new business models usually require also adjustments in the value chain. Besides this, there are also like barriers that are common to all of the innovation areas. One example is the lack of binding targets or lack of regulation to push the target, to push the market actually, or to push the demand for innovative solutions in renovation. Once we gain this better overview of the barriers that the innovations for renovation are encountering, we started looking for solutions and opportunities to tackle them. Keeping in mind the three main categories that I mentioned: the market, the barrier, the value chain, and the finance. So to do this, to look for solutions, we actually started analyzing the recast of the EPBD and overview files, looking for opportunities or windows where we could actually integrate mechanisms to boost innovation in the renovation sector. So before going through the opportunities that we found, I just would like to once again bring the idea of the, I think I'm hearing myself multiple times. So I could just like again to bring again the idea that to upscale to boost the innovation in renovation, member states actually need a strategic approach. They shouldn't look at single solutions to tackle a specific barrier, but more have a strategic mechanism or a strategic framework where they can increase the market or the need for innovation and renovation, enhance or help the transformation of the value chain, while effective mechanisms for finance are in place. So with these three kind of main pillars in mind, we analyze the EU files, especially the EPBD, and look for opportunities of where we could include mechanisms to actually help to bring more innovation into the renovation sector. This is an overview of those opportunities that we found, and now my colleague Lisa will just walk you through more details.
Thank you, Yerson. I will follow the structure was just introduced with the three pillars. Within the first pillar, create markets for innovation and renovation, we highlight the importance of regulation because binding targets provide clarity for investment needs, and this is an important stimuli for the creation of demand. As was just said, this is linked to the articles of mostly EPBD, but also then we look a bit beyond. And I won't introduce the articles in detail for reason of time, but also because we assume that the audience today is quite familiar with it. And if this is not the case, it's listed here in brackets to read through them afterwards. So Article 9 of the EPBD is on the minimum energy performance standards, widely known as MAPs for non-residential and the trajectory for residential. So the first two bullets on the slide. And for the non-residential, this means that owners of the buildings will be required to renovate their worst performing buildings along a fixed timeline. So there's this acceleration. And this is a huge opportunity to think about design options that would benefit innovative solutions. And we recommend to set thresholds for different building categories like hospitals, hotels, offices, and potentially subcategories for those, and choose final energy as the indicator. The idea is that this approach will support bundling of similar buildings and to design targeted measures for segments with high innovation potential. So streamlined and scalable, so to say, plug and play renovation solutions can be applied. And then combine it with additional incentives for innovation action, for example, renovation of larger portfolios with the same approach. Now, on the second bullet, design options are less sketched in the residential sector, but it's still an option to assign clear responsibilities. So someone needs to be in charge of delivering energy savings. This can be the owner, the municipality, or one-stop shop, depending on the context, because this will help to drive targeted innovative renovation strategies. And here again, it's advisable to reward pooling of renovation of similar buildings to that standardized processes and plug-and-play solutions can be replicated at scale. And it's an opportunity to assign responsibilities to members of hard-to-reach segments. So the EPBD calls for special attention to vulnerable groups who often live in worst-performing buildings, and by engaging them in implementing the renovation and thereby upskilling them. And then third, when thinking about creating markets, public procurement plays an important role, accounting for nearly 15% of the EU's GDP. So now we go a bit beyond the EPBD. The Energy Efficiency Directive, EED, introduces renovation targets for public buildings, and it also introduces requirements in public procurement when contracting authorities must apply the energy efficiency first principle. So we recommend member states to go beyond minimum EED requirements and actively mandate the use of green public procurement criteria in national frameworks. And this would send really a strong signal to the market and help mainstream innovative renovation solutions. In order to increase productivity along the value chain, so key here for the second strategic pillar is setting common formats and standards and putting in place instruments that push for better data and drive stronger coordination across the value chain. And one opportunity are the national building renovation plans. They are set out in Article 3 EPBD to use them as a strategic instrument to boost innovation and renovation with clear objectives and a coherent and well-resourced policy mix. And then another opportunity we see for member states to improve the digital infrastructure and better digital data is Article 22, so the requirement to implement a database on the energy performance of buildings. So the recommendation is to take this as a starting point to really establish an open data policy and make the data widely available, because this can enable innovative business models, especially if linked to digital building logbooks. And then second, public procurement is important under the second pillar too, because the way it is often done now leaves too little flexibility. So what we need more is digitalized and performance-based approaches that specify the specific performance or the result, but not the detailed renovation steps, because this will allow more flexible and more integrated renovation solutions. And it would also create opportunities for providers of innovative and holistic solutions, for example, serial renovation models to see a greater uptake of their offerings. And then third, for the circular renovation solutions to be taken up, we need a stronger supporting policy framework. Here we see the upcoming Circularity Act as an opportunity and encourage member states to move ahead. For example, we think it's necessary to make landfilling more expensive or introduce EPR extended producer responsibility schemes like France did, which supports creation of secondary material markets and also just the recycling infrastructure. And then lastly, upskilling the workforce is key. In particular, training for SMEs should enable them to use innovative digital solutions. And I should also say, as it has been mentioned, training for procurement agency is also essential to apply innovation-friendly criteria. And then for the third pillar, financing solutions, we see Article 17 as key opportunity, which essentially is on providing appropriate financial measures and design integrated financing schemes. So this is the opportunity to review existing financial support schemes and adapt them to incentivize the uptake of innovative solutions. What we focus on in the report are other important areas that currently receive limited government support. The first one is de-risking of investments. So what we see, venture capital or public innovation grants, what they do is often it's used for large infrastructure projects and new construction, but not for renovation. So this is why we recommend member states to create instruments that focus on de-risking mass production of innovative renovation solutions. And one example here is revenue-based financing. This can provide flexible funding for businesses with recurring revenue models, such as subscription-based energy audit software or renovation planning tools. And rather than paying back the capital in fixed installments, so as with traditional loans, the company pays a percentage of its future turnover back to the investor on a flexible basis. And then another promising scheme to be explored for renovation is advanced market commitments. So governments or other large buyers agree on a certain quality or performance standards with the supplier. They then commit in advance to buy a certain amount of new technology if it meets the standards, so an intelligent heating or ventilation system. And this helps companies invest in developing and testing new solutions because they know there is this guaranteed demand. So second here is to provide financial support, especially for SMEs, to break resistance to invest in and adopt new processes and construction technologies, because this we often hear is a bottleneck for innovative practices, so the fragmented construction value chain. But then SMEs showing little willingness or lack of resources to adopt innovative tools in their renovation practice. And then finally, the EPBD requires member states to massively roll out one-stop shops for the energy and performance of buildings. And this also, we see, or this presents a huge opportunity to make finance accessible. We recommend integrating third-party financing into one-stop shop services and establish these one-stop shops as trusted intermediaries. And the idea is that they can bundle individual renovation projects into investment-ready portfolios and take care of due diligence. So this would make it easier and less risky for investors to get involved. And here we put future research in the title, but it can also be read as a recommendation. And also Sybil touched upon this in the beginning. When collecting data on the adoption of and a market for innovative solutions, it's really essential to make the distinction between new construction and renovation, because a clear understanding of the status quo and also emerging developments is essential to support innovation in the renovation value chain. So we list in the report, for example, public projects using innovative solutions in any of the renovation stages should collect all possible data, or also all renovation projects receiving financial support for innovative solutions should be encouraged to collect data on the performance, on the benefits, on the costs and other aspects. And this, I know, was a lot. The report will be published soon, but with this, I would hand over to you, Sybil.
Yes, thanks a lot, Lisa and Rezan. I see that there are a couple of questions in the chat. I will try to somehow link it to the panel discussion, which is coming now, because I think some of the answers may come also with our panelists and their expertise. I'm very pleased to introduce you again to our panel to also discuss a little bit in more detail what innovation and renovation means in particular national contexts. So we looked into especially France, Spain and Germany to get a bit better understanding of how specific countries are dealing with this topic. And also we're very happy that we have speakers here from each of the 3 countries. So I would like you to welcome Victoria Renz-Kiefel. She is the Director Systems and Solutions Saint-Gobain, Germany and Austria. Victoria studied international management at the HEC in Paris and at the London School of Economics. She has experienced several years of consulting at BCG, and then she joined Saint-Gobain, where she had held several roles, and most recently as a solution director at Saint-Gobain, Germany, where she was responsible for cross-brand key account management, digital and sustainable construction, advocacy, new breakthrough innovation, and business models. And among those new innovations and business models is the Saint-Gobain Performance, which is a startup that renovates multifamily houses from the 50s and 70s through serial renovation. So welcome, Victoria Renz-Kiefel. The second panelist is Thomas Le Duron. He is managing partner at Impulse Partners, and he is a recognized leader in construction innovation and actually the founder of Impulse Partners, and that is a firm dedicated to accelerating transformation across the built environment. And he has a background in civil engineering and years of practices with Vinci Construction. And all in all, Thomas has spent over a decade shaping the future of the construction industry through entrepreneurship, ecosystem building, and global collaboration. He is a graduate of the Polytechnic Pont et Chaussée at Tokyo University and has not only worked in Europe, but also extensively in the US, in the United States and in Asia. Maybe interesting also here is that he's worked on consulting startups, connecting them and understand better how they can transform the sector and disrupt traditional construction models to drive digitalization, sustainability, and productivity. Welcome, Thomas. And then we have from Spain, Juan Jesus Munoz. Juan is a technical and project manager at the Spanish construction technology platform PTEC. Juan holds a degree in industrial engineering from the Carlos III University of Madrid, and he has worked in the construction sector for more than 20 years in different roles related to R&D management in private companies and also participating in R&D projects as principal investigators. And the topics run from the monitoring and instrumentation of structures, infrastructures, and machineries, and the durability of materials, and especially here to mention the reinforced concrete. Welcome, Juan. And also Victoria Renz-Kiefel, if you would turn on your camera, that would be great. If you can hear me, if you're here on. Yeah, now I see. Okay. Great. So I would like to start with the first round of question that I would like to address to all of you. Maybe Victoria starts here. From your point of view, what is the most important aspect in view to upscale innovation and renovation? We have seen many different approaches, but also with your specific view and what you see in particular in Germany, what would you highlight here?
Yeah. So first of all, let me say that I think it's super critical that we actually put the focus on innovation and renovation, because I think a key point what the report highlights as well is that we need policy focus on that area. What I see in Germany also with the political discussions right now is that quite often people are always focused on new build because you have demand for new apartments and so on. So always have these numbers of we need 400,000 new apartments in Germany next year, whatever. And then people are only focused on new build. And I think what is very important that we specifically focus on renovation, And because when we have this policy focus on renovation, this will automatically help to also draw in capital. Because then people are interested to say, okay, this is a sector worth for us investing in particular because it's such a, let's say, traditional sector. There are a lot of small craftsmen and that do renovation. I think therefore it's even more important that there's a specific policy focus on renovation because that will really drive innovation in that sector and not only in new build.
Great, thanks a lot. So maybe Thomas, if you would want to continue here and maybe, yeah.
Yes, nice to meet you all. I would just add to what Victoria just said. I think it's critical that we focus on renovation. And also, as you see, the regulation today, they are still mainly focused on new construction, and new technologies are also focused on new construction, new materials, and so on. The only issue is that we don't have a business model that really works for renovation. And when you say what is the main thing we need to focus on, this is where I think we should put our work on, at least to improve business model, and we have many ways to do that. Massification, pooling of units, but we have many challenges, but the main challenge is the business model, and once we will solve this one, it will be easy to work on the other challenges about technology, about workforce, and about financing.
Right, thank you. So we have the policy framework and to put also political importance here, but then also in view of making sure business models work, which is also gained a lot of attraction in the chat I just observed.
Yeah.
So the question of what kind of business models work, maybe we can come in the second round also towards sharing some kind of business models that would work. But before we do that, I would really like also to, Juan, maybe say a couple of introductory statements with regard to what you consider being crucial in order to upscale innovation and renovation.
Thank you very much, Sibyl. Probably some of the key points I'm going to outline have already been said in the and for sure in the summary of the report you presented. We have found that the fact of renovation is different to new construction is mainly very much related to the owners of the assets. Building owners often perceive in renovation as a cost rather than investment. So it is essential to develop and apply some methods to quantify and in the long term demonstrate the value of improvements achieved by means of renovation, because whether in terms of energy efficiency, comfort, or extended service life, these indicators must help to shift the perception of the owners. In terms of renovation means more an investment than a new, just a cost. And on the other hand, there's something that was previously said, and then we found very important, and it's it is very important to distinguish between a renovation and a new construction. It is always very much shift from one.
Is it only me? No, I think we
It's
lost
very
you.
important to separate both of them. You lost me?
But now you're back. You're back now. We can hear you.
Okay, thank you. Were you able to hear what I said at the beginning?
Sorry?
Okay.
We heard you.
I was just
outlining
the
I think it's.
Thank you very much.
Sorry.
Okay.
Yes, I think it's. We heard that it's important to understand that there's an additional challenge when it comes to the renovation, because it's perceived as a cost, and therefore we need a kind of finding ways to really change the perception of the building owner who is supposed to invest in renovation. If I understood that correctly.
Correct. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot for that first round. I would actually like to get a bit more deeper into understanding what is working in practice, to come up with, like, share with us some good practices from your countries. And maybe we start with Thomas this time to say what do you consider good practice in France? And
So
maybe
I'm
if you
actually
want to
surprised to
also
say
share
that,
like business
yeah.
models, then I think that would the audience would be happy to hear.
No, but for sure, what we have observed in France in the last few years is a very intense regulatory pressure on renovation, both for the social housing stock, so the single-owned residential family, and we have a huge social housing stock. We have about 11 million people who are living in social housing, so this is a very big impact on the innovation of housing in France. So this has been done in the last few years, and I would say without any major problem. And then we have a strong push also for non-residential buildings, and we call that the décret tertiaire. And this is the obligation for any office buildings, but also any building that is more than 1,000 square meters of floor space, to come up by energy consumption reduction massively, like by 40% or 50% reduction in their consumption. So this generally is automatically create a market for innovation that helps create some sort of massification, and some business model can emerge. And I am actually surprised to say that that regulation is actually a good thing, because France, you know, is a very strong regulator, and we always complain that we have too much regulation. But in the case of building energy performance, I think it was very beneficial. But now look at the impact. It was forced renovation, so there is no business model behind that. I mean, the only option if you don't renovate is to have a loss in your asset value. So you have no choice. You have to do it by law. And because the government is imposing that to all the market players, you have to adjust with all the others. But this is not going to work for individual housing or for other private housing. But at least it's something that maybe other countries can develop. The other thing where France has been quite in advance is circular economy, and I think we can be proud of having encouraged circular economy. However, the result today is very, very poor. That we have a number of things that we need to do. We have waste collection, recycling. We have mandatory sorting of construction waste. We have mandatory material inventories before you demolish a building, and you have to at least look for potential use as a circular economy. But in reality, the volumes of circular economy are still extremely slow and low. And this is, again, an economic model to do today. And I'm sorry to say that to do circular economy on a project will generally cost you more than you just using new materials, for many reasons, because the cost of sorting, of demolishing, the cost of making the old product insurable again. Insurance is a big issue. That will generally make an extra cost for the project. And if you are really interested owner, you can do circular economy, and the regulation will allow you to do it. But in the end, it will be more expensive. So again, back to my previous comment, everything is linked to the return on investment, and to the points of Juan Jesus. It's also how to make sure that all the benefits are not directly, not only financial benefits, but also the other benefits can be computed back in the economic model.
And do you see any working way of how to make that more visible and to integrate those benefits better?
Not really. I have personally done research work 10 years ago on how to evaluate the externalities of a renovation. And there are lots of externalities, and when you are promoting a renovation, you have so many things that you can do. You have comfort, you have a better life for the occupant, you have a better asset value, and so on. But in the end, it's still very difficult to justify the investment for one owner in the existing business standards that we use,
Thank you.
which is a pity.
Juan, is there a good practice example in Spain, something that you would want to highlight in the context of our discussion here? And yeah, how far is the market penetration of that good practice, maybe?
Thank you. Yes, I have a short list of some things that I would like to outline as best practices. Some of them are related to funding, like the energy renovation program in buildings in Spain, or the use of the European Next Generation funds for building renovation that has been very important here in Spain. The social housing renovation initiatives are very important also, even with some citizen initiatives and energy cooperatives. And it is very important for us also the integration of environmental certification in renovation actions. However, we believe that what's having most relevant impact in renovation project is the use of industrialized construction techniques, digitalization, and especially the use of BIM in renovation projects. We were talking previously about the difference between new construction and renovation projects and works, and the tools like tools related to industrialized construction and digitalization are a very good example of how can be these kind of projects improve. These tools are not only of use only for renovation, of course, but they are being used in a different way, and they having a very strong impact in the result of the renovation project. So we believe the introduction of industrialized construction and digitalization in the renovation project is very important. And of course, these are innovative tools.
Thanks a lot, Juan. And Victoria and Kiefer, please, if you would like to share with us also what are good practices to boost innovation and renovation, maybe with a view to Germany, and what kind of policies also work here.
Yeah.
And also maybe reacting to what you've heard before.
Happy to do that. Yeah, and it's basically a bit of an extension of what Juan just said. It's kind of really, when you take those ideas of digitalization and industrialization, where can you take them? And something what has started, I would say, about 5 years ago in Germany is this whole topic of serial renovation. Perhaps for those of you who are not that familiar with the German building stock, we basically have a lot of buildings from the 50s, 60s, and 70s, which are, let's say, very simple structures, often 2 stories, 3 stories, quite often kind of social housing, but you pretty much have like a whole street where you have the same building type. Of course, in the details, all the buildings are slightly different, but you have very similar buildings along a street, for example. And what we've done is that we've really taken these the advancement of digitalization. So basically what we do is that you scan the existing buildings so that you have at least from the outside, you have the digital twin. And then what we do is that we basically developed a system of these are kind of timber frame elements, normally, let's say 3 meters high up to 10 meters width or 12 meters depending. And then basically we have a pre-developed system of those elements. And then we say, okay, kind of this is the house that needs to be renovated. And then we pretty much modify this existing system and say, okay, kind of this needs to be exactly in this size, where are the windows and so on. And then you have pretty much the standardized process. So whereas normally when you renovate such a building, it would take you, let's say, 6 or 8 months, you can now do it pretty much in 2 months. Because you have the standardized process that you always follow. Of course, you have to do some more planning in advance, because in traditional construction, normally these things happen on site. And this is something that you have to do more advanced. But if you, with a building owner who, for example, owns, let's say, kind of a whole street, or it's a whole area in one of the big cities, you can say beforehand, okay, what's the design that we want to have? You agree on what kind of heat pumps you want to include. Do you want PV panels and these kind of things? All of that is agreed beforehand. And then you basically start with the renovation, and you can be done in less than 2 2 months with the whole building. So not just the facade or cellar insulation, but really including heat pump, PV elements, and so on. So really apply the standardized process. And this is something where we started in Germany about 5 years ago, and you can really see now that this is starting to uptake. So you have a couple of players who do that in the market now, and you can really see that there are more and more of these renovation projects are coming up, and some of the housing associations are specifically saying, okay, we want to renovate our apartment complexes through serial renovation because it saves us time. And the other aspect is that the inhabitants can normally really stay in the apartments. So the tenants stay in the apartments and we do the renovation as minimal invasive as possible, because we pretty much, renovate, put a new envelope around the existing houses and only need to go in to take out the old windows or, let's say, do some changes on the heating. But it's, not really, it's significantly less disruptive for the tenants of the buildings.
Thanks a lot. Here's a particular question still for you. I'm taking that up from the chat, if I may. So there was the question of the durability of those serial renovated buildings. Can the timber structure be reused like the mineral-based structures, which is based on the serial renovation?
So this is something that it always depends a little bit on the solution. When I'm taking the example of the system that we developed, it's pretty much we developed specific hangers. So or anchors, let's say it's an anchor system, and we hang the new elements on the existing facade. So that means, first of all, if you want to deconstruct, you can pretty much just take them off again. And you have the, let's say, existing non-renovated building. And then obviously there's a big focus on, okay, how actually do you build those timber frame elements? The advantage that we have is that with timber frame, we can really ensure that we glue as minimum as, let's say, only in very small amounts, and that we try to build those elements in a way that it's easy to construct them afterwards. So that's really where the focus then needs to lie. Of course, you can build those elements and glue everything together, and then you have like a big, let's say, garbage element afterwards. But I think this is something where we all need to be smart now, that when we do these renovations with those elements, that we already think about, okay, are they deconstructible afterwards?
Great, thanks a lot. Thomas, if I may ask you again on the maybe open data policy in France, because I know it's been raised here with regard to what is the EPBD actually requiring in terms of data availability. So basically the EPBD says that there has to be a database on the energy performance of buildings, but it does not, and it says what kind of data would need to be made available and to whom, and obviously under the limitation of the GDPR and other possible member states rules on data protection. But I know that also France has been really pushing the open data policy, and that had implications for the building sector. And I think also, just curious to hear a bit.
It's also a very strong point of France that thanks to this open data policy, we now have access to any general type of information that you need on a building. Like you can type an address, and you can have a database of what is the energy fluid, what is the fossil fuel consumption, what is the shape of the building, does it has roof panels and solar panels, does it has the potential. So it gives a strong base. This is financed, it's open data, but also it's financed by the government. So the public authorities, they are highly investing to publish this type of data, which is great. However, the data will not make the renovation. So you still need to use the data as an input. We have a number of great startups that can aspire those data and make some simulations. So this is very good when you need to prioritize. If you have a stock of buildings and if you need to prioritize within your own buildings, it can be very useful. Again, it's decision-making tools. That's very good, but it will not help save the final problem of what is the return on investment on each of your address. But at least we have the view. We can concentrate the euros on the most impactful buildings, and we don't spend too much energy and money to find the data.
Thank
Very
you.
important.
I mean, one point, and if you would allow me to address this question, maybe also to all of you, is that we found that we find governmental support for startups. There's limited activity when it comes to renovation. There's considerably more when it comes to new construction in general. That's at least our perception. However, there is also activities there to de-risk investments. We have support schemes in different countries that would somehow address the demand creation side as well. But what we found as a missing spot really is this support for the ones who renovate, really, smaller companies that would need to adopt innovative tools, that would need to digitize their processes. And do you see any, well, do you have a wish, or like, do you see any good practice here to get them using those tools and to better collaborate in the whole renovation process? Something that you see in practice, or something good practice also in terms of how governments support this?
I can just continue on my lead, but I think we do have strong government support for this type of innovations. We don't have so many of those startups who are going into that direction because they know that it's very difficult to get financed, not by the government, but by public sector. And you know, the startup needs to get financed by venture capitalists, and they tend not to like a sector that is renovation because it's highly fragmented, that is highly dependent on regulation. And we've seen that in France with the recent change of government and finance, that there's been a strong hit in energy renovation spendings. And Victoria said we should concentrate on renovation. That's true, but if you are an entrepreneur today, there are still a lot of opportunities in new construction, and it's easier to go in new construction. So you would be more. It's more likely that you would be successful in new construction, because renovation is so complex, so slow. And I'm not saying we should not do anything, but I'm just saying that entrepreneurs will find the easiest way, and the easiest way is generally to go through new construction, which is what we need to counter. You're on mute, Sibyl.
Sibyl, we don't hear you.
Sibyl, you are still
I'm
muted.
sorry. I'm sorry. I just felt like Juan was nodding, but I also saw that Victoria Renskive was unmuting herself. If you want to add on this, maybe.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, thank you very much. I think it was very interesting, the point of view that Thomas showed. Of course, new construction is usually much easier than renovation, but at the end of the day, we have the problem that we must face renovation as something that we cannot avoid. We know for sure there are some strong difficulties, like the fact that the owners are small owners that has many problems with large budgets, and they are also living in the buildings where when renovation is taking place, as Victoria outlined before. So renovation is more difficult. I'm not sure if we will be able to reach a situation, a scenario where renovation is more profitable than new construction, unless we think in terms of circular economy. But we have to try to put all these new tools that technology is providing us to try to make renovation as less difficult as possible.
Thank you. And Victoria, maybe.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's this is kind of really where policy making, I think, plays a big role, because if the different governments in the different countries really say, okay, we need a certain amount of new build, but otherwise we have a strong commitment to renovate the existing building stock. This is something that I think will help, because if there's only, let's say, a limited market for new construction, then automatically some of the players will have to focus more on renovation. And this is actually something which is interesting also when you look at the development in the last years, where new construction, in particular in Germany, was kind of quite down. There was not much happening. So there were a lot of people who started to think, okay, I have those capacities, I have people, what can I do? And we saw that in particular when it comes to some of the timber house manufacturers who normally did a lot of new build, and now we're like, okay, kind of, I don't have the orders coming in, what can I do instead? And they started to think about, okay, kind of, should we also enter this market of serial renovation? What can we do with prefabricated elements? So I think in general, it's important that from a government point of view, of course, there are some new apartments that need to be built, but you need to put a strong focus in addition on renovation. And that, I think, will help to also draw in the money and the capital to invest there.
Yes, and if I may add up on that, this is very true. And in a way, we have been happy to see many people looking at renovation in the last year, because new construction was in a crisis. And what we need to make sure is that if new construction comes back to regular level, those people will be distracted from renovation, and they will go again to new construction, because again, new construction is easier, higher margin, and so on. So we need to make sure that there is sustainable demand and a sustainable market, and we need to make sure that some market players are really treating renovation as a market and not just as a side market of new construction.
Yes, I think this is also pretty much what the experts that we interviewed, apart from you all, also confirmed very strongly. I mean, there was one question that I would want to take up from the chat box that says, would you say that startups need stronger support from the public sector instead of relying on venture capitalists in order to make a step change in the market? I would have an answer from our studies point of view, but maybe you also want to react to it.
Yes, perhaps. I think it might actually be a little bit in, let's see what you say from the study point of view, but we had a lot of discussions in Germany about what's with all the, let's say, for example, all the old military barracks that need to be renovated. A lot of other buildings that are actually state-owned. So even if there's perhaps not the money kind of for the startups coming in, but I think the central and also all the local governments, they could commit the building stock that needs to be worked on. And this is actually something where I would say it's a bit frustrating to see how slow that is happening. Because this is like, they could be the drivers of a lot of change, because they have all of these buildings that need to be renovated. And this is actually something that they could commit. They could commit and say, okay, we are not financing you as a startup, but we ensure that in the next following years, you have this amount of buildings that need to be renovated so that they have kind of guaranteed sales, let's put it that way.
We pointed that out also in our report, that it's about de-risking the investment, have guaranteed sales. Market creation is a very important point. But I know, Thomas, you also wanted to add on this, I think.
I think it's very tricky to have the public sector more involved with startups, because it's not sound for the system to inject money in startups, but just like Victoria said, to pave the way for a constant regulation, or no change in regulation is already one very good thing, and to make sure on a long-term basis that the market exists, and public buildings and schools and army barracks are a great example of stuff that will need to be done and that are not actually addressed as a mass today. They are addressed individually, and therefore it's a fragmented market that responds to those individual demands.
Yes, actually, that would also be a conclusion in our study, that it's not about injecting money into the startups, but rather we said that it's rather the ones that should use the tools developed by startups that would need further support, and then of course the governments themselves, the public authorities as owner of the building, but also like all the public procurement aspects, they can be a strong push for the market. So that's what we also highlighted in the study.
Yeah. And perhaps one other aspect to add there, and this is when I'm taking the example of serial renovation. What the governments can do as well is something that it's kind of the serial renovation bonus, we call it in Germany. It's basically, because when we start with such a new process and technology, it's quite often still more expensive compared to you do it traditionally. So what we have seen is kind of when this whole movement started, that you could say, okay, if you renovate through serial renovation, it was roughly 15% more expensive than if you would do it classically. So what the government actually did is that they said, okay, when you renovate this way, you get like 15% funding from the government, so that in the end, it costs you the same as if you would renovate the classical way. And this is obviously something that the government can do as well to support really those new business models and say, okay, kind of you need this support at the beginning so that the kind of technology picks up and that there's more innovation coming in. And then hopefully in a couple of years, you're more efficient already and kind of costs will further go down. And then we don't need that anymore. But it's basically this, you can call it like a little bit of a startup financing way for this new business models.
But then addressing still the demand side, right? So I think it's helping startups, but addressing the demand side. Great. I think we're Juan.
Yes, just something quick. We focus very much in research project and innovation, and we found many times researchers that work for research centers or university. They find out some interesting, develop some very interesting technology, and then they have the feeling they have to create a company. They have to create a startup, but to make a startup is to make a new company, and then you want to make it work within the market. So sometimes they make a confusion between selling or sharing or giving this technology to another company and creating a new one with everything that means. So giving support to these startups sometimes is a bit dangerous because you make them have the feeling that everything will be fine because they have some support from the government, some money. But at the end of the day, they have to face the market on their own. And sometimes to create a startup is not the best model to scale or exploit a new technology.
Thank you for this. I think it's important to share. We're coming soon to an end of our webinar. I would like to have one last round of a final question, just with a bit of an outlook of asking you again, how would renovation look ideally in 5 years' time? So what's the difference from today in 5 years, and what is the one key game changer here? So if you would boil it down to the one key game changer, what would that be? And maybe Juan, we start this time with you.
Okay, thank you. I will try to be very, very quick. What we think is in 5 years, renovation should no longer be seen as an exceptional or complex intervention, something that should be normalized and a streamlined process and accessible to all types of building owners, regardless of their technical knowledge or the financial capacity. That's one of the problems that we face now. So at the end of the day, maybe the key game change should be to have the ability of measuring and communicate the value of renovation clearly and consistently, something that we are not doing right now. When building owners understand that what they gain is not something that is something far more than what they spend, then renovation should stop being a burden, but more an strategic investment. So if we are able to make this shift in perception, then we will to push up renovation much more, I believe. Thank you.
Thank you, Juan. Victoria, what would you?
I really like the point that Juan just made. I think it's I can't support that. It's really a great point. I think what I would just want to add is really that we need consistency in policy making. When I'm thinking about the one game changer, I think it's consistency, because construction industry is slow We are not a fast industry, so if there's policy changes every 2-3 years, people are like, okay, this is not, it's not worth investing. So we really need to make sure that we have consistent policy making and that we have targets that we stick to. Because what I've seen in a lot of discussions also with building owners is that they say, well, we're actually not sure when do we need to be climate neutral or not? Which energy efficiency level do we need to get to? Do we need to get to A, or is C perhaps sufficient? And so kind of, I think a key point is really, once we have clarity, then this will, I think, really help to boost these markets, because everyone is clear, okay, I need to get to that level. And then everyone can start to make his plan how to get there.
Perfect. Thank you for that. And Thomas, is there any?
Yes, I can only agree with what both Juan Jesus and Victoria just said. Consistency is the key, and in order to make renovation painless, I think that we need a much less fragmented value chain. So hopefully the consistency in regulation can help some players to massify and to pull also the demand, and to make sure that we have full-scale renovations and not just a series of individual renovations that each of them cost a lot, but in the end an economic model that is easier, more productive for the private companies who are working on renovation, but also much more beneficial for the occupants, for the owners of the buildings, because again, today it's a mass of very small and individual fragmented companies who are addressing the renovation. We have so many rules, targets that we need to understand where we need to go to, and then we have a lot of technologies, materials, and options. And in a way, when you build a new building, you don't have so many options. In theory, you have many options, but actually there is a few ways to build an efficient new building. When you have renovation, you have so many options today that decision-making is very difficult. So the more consistency we have, the easier it will be to make decision-making. And once we have easier decision-making, we can invest and we can have companies who will deliver great offers for doing renovations. That's my ideal aim.
Great. Thanks a lot, all of you, for your great contributions, for your insights and comments as well. I find that very interesting. Yeah, thanks for this. I have some key takeaways. I think there is a huge potential, but yes, we need to find ways to massify, to create demand, to ensure consistency, and to also better understand and make visible all the benefits that come with the renovation, so that it's not only perceived as a complex and cost burden, but really something that you ought to do. Thank you again for your participation. We will publish our paper soon, and still in July, we will inform the audience, and whoever will be interested in reading the study should get access to it. Yes, so I think that's all. I think there were some comments left in the chat box, but I hope that we addressed some of them at least in our discussion. Thanks all the participants for listening and staying with us for today. And yeah, what leaves now is to have wish you a relaxing and peaceful summertime. Thanks a lot. Goodbye.
Thank you.